Okay. Now, what you see on the screen are the technical minimum and recommended um, hardware requirements for Workstation 12 Pro. 2 gigs of RAM at a minimum, 4 gigs or better recommended. The best processor you can find, definitely a 64-bit x86 or AMD 64 processor, at least 2.5 to 3 gigs. Now, some of this will depend on how many of them there are, or how many cores you have. If you're dealing with, say, a Core i5, Core i7, Core i9, and it's a good um, Core 7 or 9, Core i7 or Core i9, um, having each of those dies running a little bit slower will not hurt you all that much. You're going to need about a gig of space for the application itself. Now, understand, don't try this at home. Don't do this because 4 gigs of RAM, that you should take that to mean 4 gigs of RAM over and above what the operating system needs. Because running 2 gigs of RAM is a bare minimum just for Windows 10. I honestly wouldn't even have really tried to get anything useful out of Windows 7 with less than 4 gigs of RAM. Though with the 32-bit version of Windows 7, 4 was literally all you could do. But one of the other things to think about here is now there are actually 32-bit versions of Windows 10. You could run a 32-bit um, version of Linux and install Workstation inside it. But you can't install 64-bit guest operating systems on a 32-bit platform. So for maximum um, adaptability, um, you really do need to have a 64-bit platform with as much RAM as you can throw at it, with as much hard drive space as you can throw at it. Consider each of these VMs is going to have a couple of gigs at the very least just to be useful. Um, at the bare minimum, your Linux boxing are going to want about 8 gigs. Your Windows boxing are going to want about 8 gigs. And as you install more software, they're just going to run out of space. So consider this the bare minimum for any virtualization platform, unless you're just doing it as a tool, unless you're just experimenting with virtualization and your hypervisor is really just a toy. Then you can maybe get away with a platform which really can't support it. But if you're going to run multiple VMs at the same time, if they're going to be talking to each other or carrying a lot of processor load by themselves, you absolutely need as much RAM and as much hard drive space free as possible. If that means upgrading the memory, if that means buying an external hard drive, just as long as it's not an external hard drive which is going to lose itself every once in a while and break your VMs, that would be a problem. Um, in terms of your installation methods, there are 2 of them. There's the standard method and the silent method. If you already have an installation which is basically ready to go and you need to do it for multiple machines simultaneously, the silent method will work. The standard method, you click through, you walk through the wizard, you make your choices, you go. The process for a standard installation is that of course, you have to make sure your computer is going to support the software. Make sure you've got a legal, licensed installer, that you obtained it legally from a reputable source, like, say, for example, on the Hub or VMware.org. If you found it on some random piracy website, that's a really bad idea. Not only because software piracy is bad, it's theft, but also because on a site like that, you really can't trust the software you find on third-party websites. Maybe you can trust CNET, download.com, or whatever it's called today. But if it's anywhere even remotely dodgy, you should assume that every executable file on that site has been compromised, that it is carrying a malicious payload of one sort or another. So don't get it in don't grab it off of BitTorrent. Don't grab it off of the dark web. Don't even grab it off the edges of the dark web. You may have to uninstall all existing VMware products, figure out your installation path, figure out whether you want to use typical or custom. If you don't have to make specific choices that you know in advance, just go with typical. If you're going to go custom, maybe the thing you want to do is go to the custom route and literally pick everything. Of course, if you do that, you'll need more hard drive space. With a silent installation, what you're going to do is set up the installation parameters on administrative computer. After you're going to extract the installer files, use Microsoft's own installer program, not the installer that VMware provides, but the MSI, the Microsoft Installer Service, and it's going to manage the process for you. Now the difference here is this unattended installation doesn't use a wizard, doesn't use a GUI, works in the background. This is kind of this is like the unattended method that Microsoft has for their own operating systems. With those, they have what's called an answer file, which essentially means you walk through the process once, you do it, you actually complete the installation the old-fashioned way, the standard way, and it makes a note of all the choices you make, and that gets turned into, in the case of the unattended installation for Microsoft, an XML file. And it takes the executable and the answer file, and at key points in the installation process, it reads from the answer file, it throws the answers at the executable, and you go. I can't promise that that's exactly how it works here, but it might well work that way. And next we're going to talk about getting started with VMware Workstation and a little bit about the administrative console. Now, most of this chapter is going to be talking about the administrative console, the GUI. So if you've spent a lot of time in the GUI already, some of this may be review. I encourage you to listen to it anyway. There may be things that you've never done before that I'll talk about, or things that you need to do that you haven't done in a long time. So it'll still be worth it. Thanks for watching, and I'll be right back.